Hey all, hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to record a short video just to clear up maybe some uh, difficult difficulties that may be found in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I received a few emails from some of you about just reading comprehension and just the text itself. So I figured if I make like these little mini Spark Notes esque videos, it'll help you get through the books with a little bit more ease. So I don't really have anything laid out, so I'm just going to sort of go through the book up until the point where I'm at, which is I'm approximately around page 66, and just talk about some of the characters, the plot, and a little bit about Philip K. Dick, the author. One thing right off the bat to know is that Philip K. Dick was way ahead of his time and extremely innovative when it comes to science fiction. He was sort of, you know, kind of in his own universe when he hit the scene. No one really wrote quite like he did, and he's extremely influential to this day. Um, I think just off the top of my head, there's a show that came out back in 2016. I'm not sure if it's still on, but it's called The Man in the High Castle, and I believe it's an Amazon Prime show. That's actually based off of one of his novels. So, and obviously, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is the inspiration for the film Blade Runner, which is one of the most famous science fiction movies ever. So he's a pretty important figure in the science fiction canon. This book, in particular, while some will say or argue that it's not his best, it is probably his most famous. And you could argue that that's because of the success of the film version. I don't know, and there are a lot of differences between the film and the book, which you'll see when we watch the film next week. Speaking of which, I just want to throw this out there. I will be doing a showing if I can't find a free link to the movie. If it's only available on Netflix or Amazon Prime or one of the streaming services, and even one of you don't have it, I will do a showing of the film myself. And basically how that works, I did this last semester. I play the film on my laptop, and then I schedule a Zoom meeting, and you basically watch it through Zoom. It's not the best quality, but it's really the only option I think we have right now. So I will send out an email this weekend with either a free link to the movie or a invitation to a Zoom session. So you'll hear about that soon. Anyway, so the book we begin with, well, let's see. Let's start on page 1. So there is an interesting quote in the beginning. It's Auckland. It's from Reuters, 1966. A turtle which explorer Captain Cook gave to the King of Tonga in 1777 died yesterday. It was nearly 200 years old. The animal, called, I'm going to butcher this, Tuimalila, died at the Royal Palace ground in the Tongan capital of Nuka Balafa. The people of Tonga regarded the animal as a chief, and special keepers were appointed to look after it. It was blinded in a bushfire a few years ago. Tonga radio said Tuimalilah's carcass would be sent to the Auckland Museum in New Zealand. Now, what's important about this, and you really kind of learn about this or hinted at this from the beginning of the book, animals are extremely important in this book. Basically, because most of them have died due to nuclear fallout, so they are considered to be not a delicacy, uh, uh, considered to be like almost like a Rolex watch, a rarity, priceless. And if you have an animal, a bona fide, uh, real animal, something that's not synthetic, you obviously it is a sign of wealth and prosperity. So, um, and Tonga, by the way, is an island kingdom, I believe, in the South Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so once we get into the story, we meet our main protagonist, Rick Deckard, who is a Blade Runner. That's what he's referred to in the movie. He basically is a assassin. He kills androids for a living. Um, and we meet him and his wife, who is not in the best of moods. Um, another one of the themes in this book that kind of sticks around is emotion, and regulating emotion. And when we first meet Rick and his wife, we see that she is not regulating her emotions in a positive way. She's sort of in this depressive funk, and she wants to be something in which that she wants to be in. He asks her about her Penfield device, which is basically a mood regulator, and she basically tells him that she set it at that level purposely because she wants to feel the way that she feels. He basically tells her that this could be dangerous, and you need to switch it off or change it because it could be harmful to yourself, and she doesn't want to do that. And they get in this whole argument about his job and how she is not for what he does for a living, which is killing these androids. He says that he's never killed any single living person in his life. And I mean, right there, we get into this sort of uh, moral quandary because the whole point, I think, of this book, or one of the big themes of this book, is the idea of consciousness. Um, what it is to be conscious, which is really still something that we're grappling with. Neuroscientists really don't know still to this day. Some of the most prominent neuroscientists in the world don't really know what consciousness is and what it is to be conscious. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. There's been, thousands of books written on the subject, but no one really knows. And one of the questions that had been raised, especially at the time of this book, was, what would it take in order for something like an android, something synthetic that is man-made, to retain consciousness? How do you do it? Do you inject them with some sort of conscious serum that will make them conscious? So you have this sort of moral quandary through this book because um, androids are synthetic, therefore they should not have consciousness. But there is a bit of a blurred line that we see as we meet the androids because they, are pretty darn sure that they do have consciousness. Um, but Rick is an assassin of androids, and we find out pretty soon that the reason he he does this is because it's good money, and because he wants an actual animal to call his own. He has an electric sheep. He has a synthetic sheep, which is obviously not as good as the real thing, which we'll get into in a minute. Now, one of the things that can be a little bit confusing about Philip K. Dick is, or any science fiction novel, is the fact that um, when a book like this that takes place in the future from when it was written, funny enough, it actually takes place in 2021. Um, and so he obviously has to sort of build this own futuristic world using only his imagination, and he has some explaining to do. Why um, are people immigrating from Earth and living in colonies out in space? Well, there was something called WWT, which is World War Terminus, not World War III, World War Terminus, because the damage was so bad. No numerical, um, name could be put to it, so they call it World War Terminus. Um, but that was only partially of what caused the severe damage to the planet and uh, the things living on the planet, both human and non. There was a dust cloud that had sort of washed over Earth and first began killing animals. I think he says that the owls were the first to go, and then the birds, and then small animals, badgers, squirrels, things like that. And then it got worse and worse and worse. So people obviously began to immigrate from Earth in order to protect themselves and their families. Um, Trying to see if there's a section here that I could read about. Yeah, quotes like immigrate or degenerate, but he decides that he doesn't want to. He wears a lead cod piece, um, which actually filters the dust and protects him. Um, let's see what else. So he eventually tells his wife that he has to leave. He goes up to visit his sheep. He is talking to his neighbor, who has a real horse, who's pregnant. Rick wants to buy the horse from his neighbor. Um, he says something like, "Suppose I pay you $500 a month for 10 months." Full catalog value. It's kind of pitiful the way that he sort of, and he does it a little bit throughout the book, how he just sort of kind of bribes people to give him animals. And let's see what else. That's basically chapter one. Rick leaves his complex and goes to work. Um, let's see if there's anything else. No, I think that's about chapter one. Okay, so chapter two, we end up, I believe, is chapter two when we meet. Uh, okay, cool. Yeah, so we meet J.R. Isidore in chapter two, and he's a supporting character. And the story kind of goes back and forth between Rick's experience and JR's experience. So JR lives in this empty, decaying building. Consider like a giant apartment complex that just houses hundreds of people, but he's the only one left. His TV set's on, and he's watching a television show called Buster Friendly and His Friendly Friends, I think, which is a show that for some reason everybody watches. We find out why later. And there's something not right about JR, and we sort of learn this from the start. He is what is considered to be a special, which is someone who has been mentally affected, and I believe specials can be physically affected too, but he's mentally affected by the dust cloud and the pollution. And I believe because he's a special, he is not allowed to immigrate. He is basically forced to live on Earth for better or for worse. He's lonely, and I believe he works for the Rand Corporation. He is a, hold on one second. I just don't want to give you false information here. He's the guy that basically goes out and fixes malfunctioning synthetic animals for people. That's his job. And there is the J.R. Isidore character is in the film Blade Runner, but also he's different. There is this sort of idea that he fixes these malfunctioning synthetic animals in the film, but that doesn't really play a big role in the movie's plot. So that's another difference that you'll find between the film and the book. So he is getting ready for work. He's watching Buster Friendly and his friendly friends. He, like I said, is living in this apartment building by himself. It says here that he had been a special now for over a year, and not merely in regard to the distorted genes which he carried. So his genes, I think, which are manipulated by the dust, I believe, in order to, and that's why he's able to live in this polluted environment. Which I guess could be considered a good thing. But I think because the specials are such a minority, it's not considered a good thing. And as a sort of slur, they refer other individuals who were able to immigrate off the planet are known as, they call the specials chicken heads. And so, we are given this sort of whole sort of like vibe and atmosphere of loneliness. He's by himself. All he has is his television set, and he has a device which is referred to as, where is it? Again, I just don't want to give you false information here. Hmm. Oh, wait a minute, here it is. Right. It's called the empathy box. And this is a sort of device that everyone has and can sort of tune into in order to feel something, an emotion, for example, that they normally wouldn't be able to capture in this post-apocalyptic landscape. It says here that time to grasp the handles, he said to himself, and crossed the living room to the black empathy box. When he turned it on, the usual faint smell of negative ions surged from the power supply. He breathed in eagerly, already buoyed up. Then the cathode ray tube glowed like an imitation feeble TV image. A collage formed made of apparently random colors, trails, and configurations, which, until the handles were grasped, amounted to nothing. So, taking a deep breath to steady himself, he grasped the twin handles. This is a collective consciousness of everyone. Everyone that is using their empathy box is tuned in and is seeing through the eyes of this one individual named Wilbur Mercer. And you'll hear about Mercerism throughout the book. Wilbur Mercer is almost like a Christ character. That's another thing that Philip K. Dick uses a lot in his stories. He uses a lot of religious allusions to whether it's Eastern religions or Judeo-Christian religion. He always sort of incorporates that in his stories. Wilbur Mercer is climbing up this mountain He's getting rocks lobbed at him, and JR actually is struck. He feels the rock hit him, and when he detaches himself from the empathy box, he even has a wound um, to to show that he had actually, felt what he felt was actually real, and it actually harmed him. Um, and later on in the story, we learn more about the black box. We learn more about Wilbur Mercer and why he's so important. But right now, I guess it's really all you really need to grasp is the fact that Jr. is a lonely individual. He has no one to talk to. The only thing he really has in his life to keep him company is this black box that he can tune into. So he's about to go to work, and he discovers that someone else is living in the apartment complex, not just him. And he gets excited because he now doesn't possibly have to be alone, and he decides that he's going to meet this person. And it's kind of it's sad. He doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know how to introduce himself to a new neighbor. So he decides to he remembers that back when there were things such as neighbors, you brought them stuff like sugar or eggs or whatever. So he goes into his refrigerator, and he finds one block of old margarine, which is synthetic butter. I think it's like one molecule away from plastic, and he decides that's what he's going to give his new neighbor, to show that he is, a friendly person and a friendly face. And that's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3, we get back to Rick. He goes to the office to receive his new assignment. This is in San Francisco, by the way, or what used to be San Francisco. He learns that the other android the departments of the other bounty hunter or Blade Runner, as they're called in the movie, was harmed. He was maimed by a an android, and Rick has given his assignments. Um, he is told that he needs to um, retire 6 androids, and he obviously takes this as a blessing, because that's good money, and you retire 6 androids, you can afford to buy a real animal. So he eagerly takes the job. um, but there's one little caveat here. So the what is the name of the corporation? The Rosen Association, which makes these androids, has just sort of their latest bleeding edge technology is called a Nexus 6 brain. And um, why this is not a good thing for Rick is the only test that they have in order to see whether or not um, a person is an android or a real human is something called the Voight empathy test. And the Nexus 6 brain can actually outsmart this test. And that's another interesting point, going back to this idea of consciousness. In the book, they really only have this empathy test in order to see whether or not an android is a person. And if the android's ability to outsmart this test can't prove, shows that it can't prove whether or not an android is a person or not, does that mean the android has consciousness? And this is actually taken from a real life scenario, something called the Turing test. Alan Turing developed this test where, you know, if you were taking the test or giving the test to an android or something that wasn't human, a computer, for example, that test automatically could tell whether or not it was you were a human or a computer, and if you were a computer and you outsmarted the test, you had consciousness. So that's an idea that Philip K. Dick injected into the book. So let's see. So he gets his assignment, and he constantly looks at his little catalog, which tells the Sydney's catalog, which tells him the worth of animals and how much, for example, a real sheep would cost or how much it would be worth, or an ostrich, for example. And that's basically what he's really, concerned with. He wants to be able to buy a real animal. And it's for companionship and for status. So we get to chapter 4, and let's see here what happens in chapter 4. Okay, so this is still more conversation about why the other bounty hunter was taken out of work, what happened to him, how he got hurt. Rick is told he needs to go to the Rosen organization in order to learn more about the Nexus 6 and to see whether or not the Voight contest will actually work on androids with the Nexus 6 brain. And another theme that I find important in this book is the sort of the power of the corporation, because the uh, the Rosen administration is, actually making these androids. They're putting them out there, and they're also the reason that some of them are sort of staging what's the word, a mutiny, and taking life into their own hands, in the spite of humans. And I think one of the themes of the book is the sort of the all, power of the corporation and how sort of money talks. And, if you can afford security and if you can afford the equipment and the technology you need, you know, it really doesn't have to, you don't have to worry about ethics. The Nexus 6 Android brains are fair game. So, guess a question you could ask yourself is the corporation overstepping here? Or is it just doing what corporations are supposed to do, grow? It's a question you can ask yourself. So we meet, let's see, Rachel Rosen, who is related to the CEO of the Rosen administration, and his name is Eldon. It's her uncle. Rachel introduces Rick to an owl that she claims is real, which Rick says is impossible because owls were the first to go. And even according to his Sydney's catalog, owls do not exist anymore. She implores him that the owl is legitimate. Of course, later on in the chapter, we find out that it's not. So when he meets Eldon, he's told to give Rachel the Voight comp test, because Rick swears by it, and it's really all he has in order to tell whether or not a person is real. So he gives Rachel this test, and she fails it. However, Eldon and Rachel both tell him that she is a real human, and the reason she fails it is because she cannot relate to some of the questions he asks her simply because she wasn't born on Earth. So they just don't make sense to her. And why would they? And this really, uh, you know, scares the will of God into Rick because um, it's like I said, the only test they have, and the test has to be foul proof because if it's not, or foolproof because if it's not, he could be actually out there killing real people, thinking that they're androids. So Eldon's sort of argument is that you know you're not taking variables into considerations here. You're not taking Rachel's the fact that Rachel wasn't born on the planet, so she can't relate to certain things that you're telling her into consideration. This test is not foolproof. um, but then he thinks better of it, and he feels like he's being scammed. So he basically, before he leaves the office, he says, let me ask her one more question. And the question he asks her is, or what he says, and basically just to sum up what this test is, it's almost, think of like a lie detector test. He is asking her these questions and studying her initial reactions to them. So her facial tics, her blood pressure, things like that, in order to tell whether or not what she's saying to him is true or not. So he says that his briefcase, and the questions are so out there, and they usually have to do with animals, being harmed or maimed or eaten, because obviously animals are all but extinct, so they're precious. Um, and he says that his briefcase um, is department issued and it's made out of baby hide. And he says it's 100% genuine human baby hide. He saw the two dial indicators gyrate frantically. Okay, so that's what shows that she actually has genuine emotion. However, um, they only start gyrating after a pause. So she had the reaction that any person would have if they were told that a suitcase was made out of baby, but it comes too fast, or it comes too late. There's that initial hesitation, and he basically gets up and he says that's all, and he looks at Eldon and he asks her, does she know? And he says no. So Rachel actually is an android. She just doesn't know that she is. Um, so that's basically where we're at in the book, up at least until the point where I'm actually, no, there's a little bit more, but basically the point of that chapter is that Rick is self-assured now that the Voight contest still works, and it's going to work regardless of how intelligent the androids' brains are, even with a what do they call the newest model of brain, the Nexus 6 brain. So he's sure of himself and he leaves. He doesn't hurt Rachel. There's no point to, even though she is an android. So we get, after this chapter, we get back to J.R. Isidore, and he meets his new neighbor who is topless. When she answers the door, she's also terrified at first of who he is, because she didn't think anybody else lived in the building. And she soon warms up to him and becomes a little bit more strange and demanding as she warms up to him. And she first introduced herself as Rachel Rosen. She's not Rachel, but she is an android. Her name is Pris. Her name's Pris Stratton. And we soon will learn that Pris is one of the the androids that has a bounty out on her and that Rick wants. So this is basically the connection between Rick and JR. Um, it's through these androids. Rick is looking through these androids, and JR befriends them initially. That's where I'm at in the book. So this is about page 67, 66, 67. So there's still about 30 more pages to go for this week. And I will do my best to summarize them as well. Now, fair warning, do not use these videos as a sort of substitution for reading the text, because obviously I'm leaving out a lot of other stuff that I just can't cover in one of these videos. So it is very, very essential that you read the text. But I think these videos are going to work as really good sort of supplemental supplemental videos in order to help you you know get through these books and to really understand what we're reading. So that's all I have today. If you have any questions about anything I said in this video or anything else, just email me as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a nice day.